What's the difference between conceptual isolative part and one with part?
A very good question. I still have lots of confusion still, so it's good to discuss about this. 제가 분별 독과 스도 분별 찍디 들어봐. 남주 분별 독과다 분별 찍니를 해봐가셔 남주. 인참잠레스. 딱 분별 찍 쇼어스도 분별 시야체. 분별 독과 쇼어스도 분별 시야체. 진이 가르쳐. 알레레레레레. 알레. pomba mayimba ka ne ta pomba 찍 뭐인바 teacher love the choose when you discuss the choose love
No, the Rinpoche was asking the definition of the two of them and whether they are inclusive with each other or not.
They're inclusive. The definition of one with pot is phenomena that is not diverse from pot. And definition of conceptual isolated pot is that which isolates from not being one with pot.
알아. 지장을 튕이기 고할 때인지 거기 가자가 단계 내리 그 디기 뭐 천당에 개발치 몸에로.
So based on the definition of both, they both have different ways in which they are understood.
어디 개발 초르구요나. Do you feel this different even it's kind of a same but because of having a different definition. So do you feel how the difference has a different impact? Impact.
When I think about the definition, they both seem like they're basically excluding what is diverse from pot. One is isolating, but one the language of the conceptual isolate is it's isolating away, and with one it's not being that which is diverse, so it's also sort of isolating away. So it sounds like they really sounds like the same meaning in different words.
그 도도 갈라서
밥사 창만 이걸로 본바당 직 마임바 답 본바당 직 마임바 실 참마 바카네 본바당 직이 초 된 거 가지고 저기서 그래서 본바당 소소한 마임바 출라는데 소소의 출도 바카 로야디 소소한 마임바 출하는 줄로 네 본바 도바스는 본바당 직 마임바를 도발하는데 본바당 직 마임바 바카 니 로서디랑 본바당 직안도 좀
근데 지금 다 발종어디 지단이 먼저 직법 지견의 책이 요냐면은 본법 마임바 까치 본 단단한 좀 변배 도가시디 본법 변배 도가시디 가서 변배 도가 있으니까 잘 본법이 직 마임바를 도가 지금 임벌에 도가 강에 추샤려양도 때도 지금 아주 마서 마인드마서 exercise this month when you sondo치 본보다 소소 뭐 그래서 소소 마인비 취했어요 좀be 소소 마인이 디딩에 sondo치.
Doesn't it sound to you like when you say not diverse from pot, you're just talking about something that's not diverse from pot, and when you're saying isolates from not being one with pot, there's like some sort of extra mental exercise almost that you need to do to get to it. Do you at least feel like that? In terms of how we, yeah?
Normally we kind of, when we say, where is the pot? Then we just guarantee there's something solidly there. But we don't just bring any kind of a doubt that on what kind of base we are imputing the pot. So especially when we have this strong emotions coming, then where you are clinging to the object, we feel so fixed there. Feels like we know what I'm talking about, what I'm holding towards. But then there in this debate, it takes kind of like a parts of break. So in order to know the pot, then you need to know these and these. 제 생각 디 란저기 롱올이야 베나 단단한 저 딘디슬나 다디단 대화 커두도 시제 차단직디 빼나 만주기 그사냐만 안전주 오마 라지 정화법이 이탈리아 돌아 되도 잠배 안주 다 편백이 덕실라 아니 군주비 취해지 마도 된다고 취해 삼로거로 코만연도 잠배 아니 안주 그 편백인 게 된담된 밖에 시야마도 된담된 바 이니지 아니 편백이 덕실이야 초 용약이 삼로거로 코냐 말이지 디당 단다타 편백이 똑와세 깨지시에 드주부르려야 되니 지기양 참저지 해 주지리스.
So in Italy this year when we went to the 15th chapter of the Fundamental Wisdom by Nagarjuna. There was this discussion that happened about whether in the basis of designation or in the basis of imputation of like something like a pot, whether you have only some conventional things or like a conventional object that can act as the basis of a pot or the basis of designation of a pot, but you don't feel like there's anything that is the ultimate nature or the ultimate nature of a pot that can act as a basis on which then you impute or on which you then designate a pot. So over there, when we were discussing this, when the discussion arose about what is the basis of designation of something like a pot, then that discussion and the discussion over here of what it means when you talk about an isolate of a pot, there's surely some sort of connection between these two ways of talking about it.
This subject is a quite important subject because one of my teachers, whom His Holiness appointed him as my teacher, so he is one of the most respected, learned scholar in the monastery. So then I was only 11 years old when he was teaching me Dura, and especially the Dobongunzi, the Karsatan, the isolates. And then as a 11-year-old brain, I was so confused what he's talking about. And then he looked at me and said, and this part is very important in the future when we debate and contemplate about emptiness. This is, we need to think again and again. So this was the last teaching of his, and then he passed us away. So that there he pointed out very specifically. I still remember that. Okay.
So I have a number of questions that we came up with. So if there's a lull in the questions, I can read from that document. Yeah.
Do it. Okay, anyone want to go?
I have a question.
Okay.
We have two questions. Could you explain the difference between the inferential realization of emptiness, the conceptual realization of emptiness, and the direct realization of emptiness, and also explain why it takes one eon to get to that direct one?
춘이도베 제바체마 춘이도베 똑바 춘이도베 무슨 체마니기 예와 숨샤도 제바체마 똑바체
제바체마체
제바체마체
아니 무슨
다 똑바지라 그래
똑베기
똑바체
제제
라 제바체마체 똑바체 무슨 체마체 내중고 숨숨 디니 개바치 숨으나 제제 아니 다 제바체마 원래 내중고 숨어야 포야라 결바치 고래기 가보토기야 나왔어.
네. 다당고 동이 둔주수지 또베 차네 아주 다 르지제 바스. 아니 고 아주 마소네 고유인도 전에 르바이 금전 양다질 땡지 아니 고 년시년 고얘기 최지인도 전에 고 지가서 그래요. 란주기 옹연리 차르나 신시지 도도 차례 맵이 인상고 리베기 양내양도 다시 제제 안 라바도 딜이야 객진이디 태종부 최고도 전에 딜이야 아니 리베기만 타 징징 로도도 파셀제 안 타마 밥사데 디 파봉도 전에 아니 고 아주마 손에다 디마돈 로스민도 냠베게 로 천대지 계원도 베제 리시제바 간라 파고 이지레스.
Inference it's a conceptual mind, but it's conceptual in the sense that it needs to get access to its object through a reason. So because it needs a reason which is then going to mediate the way it kind of accesses or gets to know emptiness, the way in which it knows emptiness is not the way in which direct perception knows things, which is like in a clear kind of directly perceivable way where it's clear and whole, but it's something that you have to come to via inference. And so for that, it's something that requires repeated engagement and familiarization for you to have access to it. And what it does what the process that occurs or that arises when you go through this is that by inference, you're able to do away with the obstacle to realizing emptiness, which is in this case doubt. So when you can access emptiness through inference, what you're essentially doing away with is doubt regarding to emptiness. And because you do away with this doubt, what you end up with is a conviction that is reliant on reasoning to say that it has to be like this. But it's still different from direct perception because it doesn't have a clear image of what it's perceiving.
다 돈이 뒤지 수주 베나지게 ngaranzo게 퇴베된 삼베된 공베된 실레온도 잠베 다 ngaranzo 삼중기 네바마니 봐도 ngaranzo기 리비기 다시 지제 용도니 슈골이야다 지기 nga좀마 손에 제바기 똑바서 그러다 똑바디 사유교들이다 제바기 똑바디 줄 마제 중간라 네바도 디 가서 그래 디지 고고메로 ngaranzo야 디 남샤준도 신년 공부를 지르바 가서 그래 라메기 지기 진럽세야다 아니 수수기 소남 기 잡된세야다 디텐텐지 고고 유서래 가진스나 디 단다 또당디 아니 간주 가서 그래 간주 또버 줄리게세 디게제 뉴잠베 또버 줄리게발라 아니 디디디 요래 아니 딩에 삼로당지 대셔나가 아니 하고도 그랬어야 디 배진 요소 말해 디 또버 줄리게세 디 네버도 란주기 라메기 친랍당 소남당 아니 딜이야 바르도 주행기다 아주 태좀 그래서 상만 염도지 로나마도 다 모섬도 동ning 모섬 통하다 인데 뒤주투주 통하려야 디 객치기 유스래.
So then, since this, even to attain this state, this is not often spoken of or mentioned, but even to have a kind of inferential realization, and so you're talking about a realization of emptiness, even if it's merely inferential or conceptual, because it has to arise from a repetitive or a repeated familiarization through hearing, reflection, and then later on it's going to get developed into the wisdom of meditation. When you're talking about inference, you're still within the realm of reflection. So there's hearing, reflection, and meditation, you're within the realm of reflection. But even over here, it's unlikely that the way that you can even come to an understanding, even if it's only inferential, of emptiness, is just because you hear a few reasons and you go through a bit of reasoning in your own mind by yourself, and you can, it's not likely that you can expect to actually realize or remove doubt with respect to emptiness just by doing this. And so, of course, if you want to have direct realization of emptiness, it is essential, but even just to have inferential understanding or realization of emptiness, it's essential that you need the blessings or the involvement, or you need to rely on a spiritual guide who's going to make this happen for you.
디 베나 자바네 땅 오숨도 바 오페드에들라 아니 단다 개바직스르베 그걸 갈라서
개바직 가지고
개바직을서 남규가 저기 디 전주심 전주 초람당 조람걸 깨지 시디 초조니 베갈 초조니 갈직 아니 통람네 거사 초조니 갈직체 졸람 마다사둘 직 다바사손 직체제 고셔 디잡아 마도지기 동니 통할 동니 오솜도 통할라 배진 디기 배진 시에 말해 디 배진 전주 선배기 살라 시에고야디 다조 동니 통화 장시 마인바 아니 라바도 랑진진리야 아니 디마 카데자익셔도 동니 공부도 동니 공부나 도서 로가요 봐 디면로.
So the question of what kalpa to go from inference to direct is a division that's done on the bodhisattva level, on the bodhisattva path, where the first kalpa is from the path of accumulation and preparation, the second one is they're known as the 7 impure bhumis, and then there's the 3 pure bhumis, which is the 3 divisions of 1 kalpa, 2 kalpas and 3. Just to have inference transform into direct realization of emptiness doesn't require 1 kalpa. The idea of it requiring 1 kalpa is when it's not just it's not just an inferential mind that is turning into direct realization of emptiness, but it's an inferential mind that then develops the ability, which is getting progressively stronger, to counter self-cherishing as well. So it's specific to the bodhisattva path. It's not that a mind that is inferentially realizing emptiness necessarily requires 1 kalpa to turn into a direct realization.
디 뉴점베 간지 전주 선바지리기나 담보 가져다 돈의 송백이 도기 체도 체도 주세요. 도기 체도 체도 주제리교베 아니 전주 선바지리나 개버숨 시가 두 가중 고구이네 앵에기 랑진진 카드지 자토는 릭서르세지 디스미슈 여디니 지긴도 점베 그도이네 개버지군이 동 가져이네 개박하면도스 아디 카드지하긴 세기 스미슈디 레고 있으래.
So if you are a disciple who is a disciple of the sutra, the teachings of the sutra, of the sutric teachings, and you are a disciple who is a Mahayana disciple according to the sutra teachings, even if it takes 1 kalpa or 2 kalpas or 3 kalpas, it doesn't really matter, because the drive or the underlying motivation for such a person is whether it takes 1, 2, 3, 5, however many it might take, as long as or if I can counter or if I can reduce, abandon self-cherishing, it's all right. So there's no real urgency as far as time is concerned.
다지상가 태과 침비기 되뇌다 하나 라바도 말한 적이다 단데 지금 날린데 주주기 토네야 로고니기 미딜기 심슈텔량 고종적거를 땅비나 아니 가리 투종 고나리 가리 체네리 얘기 디 얘기 뚱니기 된당 아니 라바도 지기 기켜서니만 아주 갱 숨어나 신시지 가리 제바디 얘기 타바르베 줄이안 로에게 체도다니 가리니 지긴시 디 타반 로야라 니 지기 따다지기 편도 지기 마토나 맞자원이 지금면서 드리지 마타이메 쇼고야도치 다디 그 단다단기 전주신비 되는 전주신비기 에 투제나나 신생아 저기 냠도든지 구성을 보다면도.
So I wonder if one can then, using this understanding of how bodhisattvas have that kind of conviction or fortitude to say, irrespective of whether it takes 1 kalpa or 2 kalpas, I'm going to ensure that whatever I'm doing is acting as an antidote for self-cherishing. If we can take that same, let's take this and use it as an example to generate the same or an analogous wish to ensure that whatever activities we do similarly when we're engaging in the study of the texts or the Shastras or the Mahayana teachings, that whatever we do, irrespective of how long it takes, I'm not going to do anything that is deviating or taking me away from realizing emptiness, and I'm going to ensure that whatever I can do is leading to that. So much like Gen was saying the other day, whatever I do, I want to ensure that I'm able to transform it or make it become a cause for entering into the path. So if one can generate, much like the Bodhisattvas have the same kind of determination to be able to endure excessive periods of time and difficulty, as long as they're sure that they're going to be able to overcome self-cherishing, if we can have a similar attitude with our wish or desire to attain liberation or realize emptiness, something that we could probably draw as an analogous example.
아니 샤바칼라스 그디는
가진 거르스.
가리
제바직 똑바직. 인지랑 아주 inference 당 conceptual 하람 카가시기로.
아 네네. 디신 거 뭐야?
그 단위 슈치 다 돼요.
아 네네네네. 다 inferential 시도 딸된 거지.
inferential 생각도 제바체마.
제바사마티체.
conceptual 생각
똑바티체.
아니 무슨다 무슨.
그저 디 제바디 간디를 치고다.
So when you asked your question, you said conceptual, inferential, right? Remy?
Yes.
I can't see you, sorry, you're behind the pillar.
It was inferential, then conceptual, and then
Why
direct.
were you distinguishing between these two? How do you understand inferential and conceptual to be different from each other?
I think I read something that was something along the lines of shamatha and vipassana joined together, observing the conceptual realization of emptiness is the beginning of the path of joining. And I was a bit confused about that.
The path of?
The path of joining.
And-
Prayoga marg.
But where is that with the conceptual and inferential? Like, how were
according to-
you distinguishing? Why were you distinguishing between conceptual and inferential?
According to what I read, inferential came at the very beginning, and then conceptual was at the beginning, and then direct was at the end.
One sec. Conceptual came at the beginning, and then inferential,
No, inferential was at the beginning, then conceptual.
and then conceptual. And you understood conceptual to come where?
It said that it was the union of shamatha and vipassana, observing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. 군수 남기는 것도 돈이 똑바로 지 요러면서 신내 달 하동에 참가를 내용도 제밤마이 삼중이 지내요. 아주 지 근데 지 샤유라 졸람 야스 내용도 그럼 제밤마이 그래서 달라 템바마이
딸때 뭐지?
어디르지 뒤인도 그럼 돈이 똑바디 달라마 텐데닝기 넘버 똑바들라 코샤
디시그레도
남기 슝라는 데는 미생가 시마로
코란
이나 코란 데네지 로요서 당 할람디 하동 오페윤
달 하동
당 아주 도난 네발라 미벨 하동 레 졸람라야 체페 계셔지 요로 어따고 졸람기 똑바들라 돈이 똑바 코요서
인줄 하동 되는 뷰 제발라에 하동 셰쇼고 봐.
아주 양지단 하동 제바 세말라 삼중 이미 니지 샤르 삼중알라 레윤도 제바 마레스
제바 말이스.
제시야 마레
제시야 마레.
제시레 이는 제바 마레스 근데
제시야 말이스.
제시레
제시레스.
또신 또베르베레
도스도 베리버레스.
랑기
알레 남셔주도 한데디. 간제 딱 배신 ngosumgi nyawani ki yo mare ke gyurba
계규
다 이나양 제발야 단다 녀마 ngargi jaba chama gyumzen pe chigdani gi thod maje be na ya dostana doste be na jaba ngargi jaba na shingi bezete mo be inza ani ko bejendi jaba madens chi jaba mayin se gi gyurma to yang ko gyumzen ko tezi chile teng ta samlo tezi tang go chong be na ya ko gyumzen la ta tembe
So, what you're describing, where there is a state where first it's inferential, then it's conceptual, and then it is direct, that conceptual that you're talking about, that you're putting, it is mentioned like that, it is kind of stated like that as well. It's not yet direct, so it's not direct. It's not called inferential because it doesn't have to rely on reason the way it needed to initially. So initially when you have to understand it, and then when you're cultivating it, you need to again and again go through the reasoning or rely on the reasoning to gain access to emptiness. When you have then bumped up by a level, or when you kind of advance further, you are not relying on reasoning or on reasons to the same degree in which you were relying on them earlier when you had an inferential realization of emptiness. But I'm going to say that even though you're not relying on it to the same degree that you were relying on it earlier, where you had to go through the reasoning repeatedly, I'm still going to say that what you have currently defined as conceptual realization of emptiness is still inferential, because in some measure it still has to recollect or recall the reason that led to it, that allows it then to have access to emptiness.
지상 남세 준도 아주 제발라 아니 제바 참아 sarto 시들어 아니 기진이버디 지시시 아니 고 참아마인데 두선도 버리고 이미 사도 많이 비슷하고 봐 더디 디응 아론 삼로시 땅도 잠베 두스다도 잠베 두선도 버리고 이나 아니 담배랑 아주 참아려야 남주 데 고란도 삼로당에 개와요 봐 배나 튕규위기 조울기시에 아니 아주기 도심르베 도심기 루르베다 sarto 시에디 sarto 시에디 아니 조도마도 계지만 이제 당불도 못들게 시에 봐. 다 뒤조도 조 개발 거안에 지도 뒤조도 말한주 디장배가로 또시 포커스드 거이메 하고 거액지는 다 가서 켈렌 지체빈스.
So the reason why I'm holding this position or why I'm saying it like this is because, for instance, when you talk about valid cognizers or you talk about inferential valid cognition, the general way that you define valid cognizers is when they're new, when they newly know something. There's a concept of it being new or for the first time. And then everything that is secondary or which arises in a subsequent moment, we call it a subsequent cognizer. Because even though it knows its object, it's not knowing it newly or freshly or for the first time. But this way of talking about valid cognizers, where we say praman, where the pra refers to the first moment, is then interpreted differently when you're doing madhyamika, where now validity is not determined by its newness, but with respect to the main object that it knows or not. So the primacy is no longer temporal, but the primacy is with regard to the object. And so when we're studying, when we even talk about things like the definition of valid cognizer, we see distinctions between the various schools which qualify valid cognition as new or main object. And so because this is something that we need to pay attention to all of these little details and nuances, I've held on to this position right now where I'm currently going to say that what you are calling a conceptual cognition of emptiness, I'm going to still insist that it is inferential. Even though in the text it might say otherwise, just for us to at least be aware that we need to pay attention to these details, I'm going to say that it is still inferential.
올라서 아니 다 next.
Yes. So, what is the mental object when I'm thinking about isolate of pot and one with pot? So I'm wondering whether these are two different mental objects or they're same mental objects.
What do you mean by mental object? Do you mean that third division of material phenomena?
No, actually, like when I'm actually thinking about one with pot, like I have some kind of image in my mind of a pot, right? So is that the
when you're thinking of one with pot, you have the image of a pot in your mind?
Yeah, that's how I think that it is. Like
okay. What's the difference between that and isolate of pot?
Yeah, it's at the same image.
디 샤당 때 개발 유지로 봐. 시장가 그 던지 라반나시 봄보다 소소 뭐 임벌 줄로 소소 마레스도 점베 샤당데 다지 complicated 시라마셰비나 딜리아 인포메이션 시라 먹어니 있으노치 다 뱀비기 독바 세게 섬로주 공도 점베 뭐 임버지 개발 될 때는 봄바세 롤샤리 디니 된데 개발 유로다
So there is a difference because the information is different. When you're thinking about the information that is required for you to realize one with pot, it's just saying it's not different from pot. It's not diverse from pot. Whereas when you're adding the qualification of isolate of pot, there's a lot more that's going inside. In one case, all you have to think is, it is a phenomenon that is not different from pot. Whereas when you're thinking isolate of pot, you're thinking it is something that is isolating it from not being one with pot. So there's a weight of information that is different in both cases. So then correspondingly, they will have to have different mental images as well.
세상가 다디 단다 계제되던 땡기 계제 답교선으로 지레되는 꼭 때스 건저와다 차두 세상 안쪽에서 우마랍지 정화받는 한 루드점에 말할 달럽지 치슈르데 세상가 디 러베 다와트베고 우마 직세기 나로라야 아니 봄바스니데 가르레 마 송원도 점에 아니 디에 봄바 봄베기다 아주 마소네 랑신세들와 가서냐마 봄베 랑신세디 카디레 스라도 점에 디에 봄베 랑신 말이 다 계절이 신의 봄베 랑신가 아니 디에 참마 봄베 랑신만에 랑신만 랑신스니데 아니 간드지레스도 남샤 준동안 주기 춘이 셈나로 사마녀야지 다 봄베 랑신도 추케고 세상가 남샤 준동안 주 제베갑라 아니 봄바스도 점에 아니 군주비 추기 참마 캐원지 니 봄바세 시행해야지 디 견더레스 요 말데 이나양 아주 디디기 고와데 나로라야 봄비기 춘이 딜레데니 봄바세 롤 샤단데 큐니 곰지고는 자르메도 점에 다 단단한 저기 노정 장대베 나로라 아니 소소 마임비 추세 직자단 직단 아니 봄바디 거기 마임바디 파까니 아니 봄바스 술 샤로한데 딱은 제차고 싶고 단단히 라베도 같아.
So even though there's a risk of repetition, but just to go back on that 15th chapter thing that I was saying earlier, in the 15th chapter, for instance, there's a discussion about what the nature of things is. It's an analysis of what we translate in English. There's different translations, by the way, but just translated literally, it's an analysis of what nature is, an investigation of the nature of things. And Acharya Chandrakirti goes through an entire a very long, elaborate process where he's inquiring into what the nature of something is. And so when he inquires into the nature of what a pot is, he says, this is not what the nature of a pot is, this is not what the nature of a pot is, this is not what the nature of a pot is. And at the end of his investigation, when someone says, well, then what is the nature of a pot? He does respond by saying there is something that is the nature of a pot. But unlike what we're familiar with commonly, where when we consider what a pot is, we always consider some sort of conventional or surface level reality or phenomenon as something that qualifies pot. And we're not at all familiar with, or we don't fathom that the emptiness of a pot is the actual nature of a pot. So if you're looking for the nature of a pot, we feel like we're going to have to pick from among some sort of conventional surface level reality, but not the ultimate reality of the pot, which is the emptiness of a pot. So similarly, to be able to develop that skill later and understand how you can eliminate all those other things and understand that the nature of a pot is actually emptiness, you're already training at some degree where what do you mean by one with pot? And there's just one layer of information that you need to navigate to have access to it. Whereas when you're saying what is an isolate of a pot, suddenly there's an additional layer of complexity that you have to go through to get to it, where you're saying it is that which isolates from not being one with pot. So the process or the mental process of deconstruction and the subtlety in terms of how you have access to it is something that you're already training in now, which then I see is very closely connected to how then Acharya Chandrakirti talks about it later.
Rinpoche, I was wondering about substantial continuum. We say that the seed is within the same substantial continuum as the sprout. But I'm wondering how far that substantial continuum goes if the seed was to then go on to make a tree, and then an apple comes from the tree, and how far you can say that substantial continuum lasts.
substantial
제규.
제균.
제규.
오케이. 제균도 다른 거 무슨 소리야?
제규기 타드 가봐봐도
다 가봐도 도그랬어.
도르. 베나 사변디치 뉴고창 뉴고디 싱차 싱올라 구슈게 구슈데르 그런 또 그런 제규 가봐봐도 대칭해야지.
그거 제균 딱 로스고 유머.
가시.
베나랑 저기다 사변지케요.
그래라.
다 더블주비 사변디 코랑기 오디 제균디 찍는 레벨이다. 되네 고 마시기 봐도 고 투면지 봐 로베 있는 경우 가르도스.
What's wrong with it coming from forever and going on forever? Of like a seed, for instance.
Then, if you make 100 apple pies from the tree, do they all have the same substantial continuum as that one seed?
Don't talk about apple pie. That's very serious. 가르쳐도 사.
그 apple pie gas 오나디 사병기 지금디 참만한 도데 오르베.
답변아 애플 자유나 애플 자스 오르베.
릴라.
애플 자유나.
사병치 레케베 apple gas 차가. 호타 apple pie 레레레 나올라 사병기 지금 오르베. 듣기지 티요서.
애플 파이 레레.
가상 게 페로. Did you 아마저 슈나라 제릭 치베기 체니 나올라. 니엘렌치레 충we 타데베.
알레 디송송송 따따.
게 니에보낭.
니디니보당도스.
게스나다 니엘렌치레 충we 제 타데베 춘이
메송소.
피시케스 들어
디디 삼담라.
디엔두타 게름치라 파카디슈나. 다 사본치레 케베 구슈갸 메송요.
사변치리 소소소소야.
다 사본기 차시수 규르베 제레레레 구슈레레게 제윤나 두르마토 사본 치란지기 제윤라
알레레레.
제 타데베 제운 갸든데 다 충승 갱이 숨기 요도 하시.
디 삼노타.
게실라지 소나나 모란티 땡기 요르기 띠띠리 디시존 체네 티오탕 요서.
저지란라다.
Are you thinking of Gen's thing of saying substantially different things don't have one?
That's what made me think about it.
오케이. 두르지. 답변하러와 아란주기 답변아 파마직체르바 파마치에 되네 보고도 방전 총으로와 보고도 텔레테네 보고 말아 총 디제기 다 셈기 균디 소소 셰고르바 다이네 수국이 제기 균디 아니 나르기 땅 아란주 ancestor 파마타 베 가서라 당분이라고 진짜 죽어줘야나 안데니니 총으로 총 말했을라나.
So like if you have parents who give birth to children and then they have kids and then you have lots of kids and then you got this massive family tree that stems out. Let's say the mind has its own everyone's mind has its own separate continuum, but the body, would you feel comfortable saying that this has to be taken back to like some sort of original couple, that the original kind of Adam and Eve where everyone came out from? Do you feel comfortable saying that?
To be in the same substantial continuum?
Yeah, like if you're talking about substantial continuums and how far back can you take it or how far forward can you go, when you're talking about people having children and it multiplying, when you take it back, do you find yourself reverting to like an idea that there have to be two original people from whom it all stems? Physically, for the physical substantial continuum.
It starts feeling weird already to me there.
Weird.
weirdless. 세상에 아주 패밀리 트리 지단데 디르바. 세상 당보 대체는 엔 당보 대체는 되는 도스 레벨에서 지제 아주 디치 트리거로다. 다 뒤에 상보다야지도 아니 단다 갱 소문나시. 지기 가르소래 제지 코랑 되는 게브르세디 도메스 아니 갱규도 조 가르좀진 가르거 나봐.
Sumas.
그 소문소야.
Tirare sumas. Thinking killing mess. Zeri.
다디 디nen가 디 신고요다. 디 가르도다 고초란조 섬주 가르도 디
So the idea of when you kind of draw family trees, it seems to trace back to like an original ancestry, right? Like an original couple. That's one way to think about it. And the other way is Gen's way, which is two things, if they're substantially different from each other, they don't have one substantial cause. That's the other way that's the other possible way of thinking about it. So which one do you all find to be more convincing?
가상 개인기 송여디 가래 누구지 가사 사변질이 집에 nenduchi jungni 가래 들어봐 nenduchi jung 그래 사변질이 집에 nenduchi jung니 디 아니 넬린 지고 질리 중 말했어
가상 미지기 겐라라 모지기 되게 지티셔 다니치 Did you get rangi kazo samlo tamba ina dani chik da mojik seyadi nyelen chik le chunga thade be chuni la ma shego res ani nyelen chik le thade be chuni ni in sono khorani phazu ze thade da mo thade yin si ma res
아네
지난 게기 손님 담보 좀 그래
그래 와쳐서
맞을래 그래 That wasn't an answer, please. You still have to answer. This is a private discussion.
So whenever my teacher or a teacher will make a kind of a statement, so this is the thesis. So that is why you really shouldn't leave this as a, oh, my teacher holds to something like that. If your teacher holds to this kind of a thesis, it's make sure this is a thesis. So now the thesis is always incomplete whether there's no reason. So you need to find the reason. So make sure that you understand why this Adisha and my teacher holds to that kind of position. And then try to find out the reason. That's very important. Sometimes what I listen to my teacher said, some people says that I don't believe in that. And then I just go like, okay. So then I don't learn anything from that. So make sure you just have to try to find out why this kind of statement, why my teacher holds this very unique. And also same to Adisha. So that's very important. Okay.
So I have also a question with regard to one with. So we were discussing in class how pot and then the word pot but in a different language would be one, like top. Then we also, if we had a pot here and I would point to it and say like that, that would be one with the definition of pot, so that flat-based bulbous thing, So this I kind of can follow, and then we said that pot and flat-based bulbous thing itself, they are not one. And so this part I can't understand, or I don't follow. Like, to me it seems, if I say pot and top, like the German word, I'm referring to one thing, so conceptually and conceptually. If I point to like that, or I don't point to it and just describe it linguistically, I'm also referring to the same thing. But if I say pot and the flat-based bulbous thing, it's not one. So in this, I'm not sure if the question is clear.
What was it? One with pot?
Pot is one with top.
Top.
Or any other language.
아니 봄베 세니 말라요. 도대샤주 주도기 된신우가 라요. 다 타니라 떠노고 봐 가두마기 제주소 상황 인디코라 다니라 때문에 보통 쉐드에 디건 소도당 부두스
너
이나야 봄바다 떠데로 샵쇼마 추겨기 던치는 거 딩이 남편순 타딩이 슬라야 딩이 로라지 담도 되게 잘
신이도 천천히 있어 그래. 알레.
딩이 타딩 가전에 거니 주사기 시치가 인디 다 봄바 주스 봄바 쉐주가 자 주사기 시다 또베 신시 디야 치그레 떠데셔 추겨기 던치는 거 랍사기 시다 주사기 시 셴사기 시디양 가가니 쪼야메디 다 딩이 타데 레슬라야디 로라데고 체민도
제장가 죽식이 식직바 있네 양스르바. 어고 타디게 시추고 이러면.
Can you speak of two things being different even though what they are referring to is the same, you think? What do you think?
Can you say that question one more time?
Can you have two different words, or can you have two things that are different even though they may refer to the same thing? Do you see it? Do you find a problem with that?
Yeah, I do.
제장가 어란주 남셔준도 끼지 시비나 미지기 내가 노자지 제비차네 미디 계시고래 미디 야고직 시비차네 미디고 계시고래 이나야 디니를 때니 시바서 지간 보고 열때 미디니 미니들 통주로 가지 예 미시지 그래서 랑주들 초로.
Can you say, for example, that there is the same person that, based on certain unpleasant actions or certain things they've done, has behaved in a certain way, and then based on other actions that they've done, behaves in a different way? So they're a good person based on certain things, and they're bad based on something else. So you can have two different ways of seeing this person, but eventually the thing or the person is a single person. Is that something that is okay?
So this seems okay to me, but then I would kind of think of, to me that's the mutually inclusive case. So when something is mutually inclusive, but it's not one.
알레 시밥사 지간아
But is it one base? The good person and the bad person, is the base or the referent of both of these people the same, or is it two different referents?
I guess the base is the same, but the perspective, maybe either the perspective is different or what you focus on is different. So it's kind of it's the same base but a different angle.
시직라 통주미라와니 다 제장가 단지 모랑기 저땅도 뒤땅을 봐 저기 또디시 슈슈고 던져도 봐 들어 또디시 슈슈 던져도 봐다 봄바 세두잠베 군이 타디샥도스
군이 타들의
시직간샤
마코도 지단에 타데직 송샤스 고 시직을 두고 주연도 지지랑 지를 두고
어 시직 두고 가가 주에 체 가자 시직간다 직체 아니 이나양 파주 디 당불 타디시도스 다 디자베기 남주 진이도 천재니디 타디시 시에고야디 남샤준도 가르치니 타디시 요레스 좀제 어디로
So is like this example with the person, sorry, is that okay? Yeah.
No, you can.
So the person example, and then what you were saying earlier where you have like flat base bulbous thing that can hold water and pot, you're saying that they have the same referent but they're two different things. You're uncomfortable with that, right?
Well, I'm uncomfortable it being not one, but pot and top being one.
Okay, but when you say definition and definiendum, for example, right? When you say that which has the three qualities of a referent existent or of an imputed existent, why do you think they're asserted to be different to start with? definitions and definiendums generally, they are stated in the text to be different, right? So why do you think that is?
Well, I know from our discussions that you need to know, so to know pot, you first, if you don't know pot, you can first know that which is flat-based bulbous thing, and through that you can know pot.
진이디 하 먹어봐.
그래, 천자 쉐바랑 천이 쉐바랑
중간도 좀 그랬어.
당가서 계제 쉐서 나라 근데 지 토요샤 디 김센 디 두기.
디디로 와. 제장가 진이디 마신베 응원도 천자디 마신도 잠베 진이디 천자니디
타데레스.
타데인스. 다딜레 뭐랄데 캬바미도 쓰고 봐.
So are you saying that there's no pervasion, for example? Like take pot and flat-based bulbous thing that can hold water. It follows they are different because to know pot you need to know flat-based bulbous thing before. If I was to give this as a syllogism, would you say that there's no pervasion?
No, there's no pervasion.
No.
캬바미도 쓰고 봐. 캬바미도 쓰. 다디나 제장가 마란주기 진이다 천자 진이도 천자 시에고야디 시카가 이메 깨제토니 시에베 많이 비체 이나양 된딩에 망에 토니 깨제 시에베이나 된딩에 망에 토니 시에베이나 아니 베나 진이디 하고 천자도 하 먹거나 단지 베나 단단한 주 배버직다 저민이 케원체 아니 진이 하고 요다 진이 하고 이내 천자 권이 로가체로다. 천자 로가체로다. 분벌 케원에 케어레데 분벌 케당의 로가체 인자 시지간로 권이 람상 밥도서 말아. 세상에 디니니에 권이기 천자의 진이기 내비 슈라 람상 디레스란 하모고도 점be 권이 버로를 개발하러 왔다.
So let's if one was to say that there's no different reference, it's the same thing. But the distinction is being made on the fact that, or based on how you come to know them. Let's say that, for example, if there's a Tibetan and a German and they speak, even though they know the same definition, and they also might know what pot is, but when you ask the next person, what do you know what pot is, or do you know what topf is, yeah? The fact that they're not able to immediately recollect or immediately identify what is being spoken of, if you were to use that in an analogous way to say that the definition and definiendum, even though they have the same referent, there is a progress or a progression in which you get to know them. Is that not sufficient evidence for you to feel that they might be different? Because there is a progressive, like there is a progression in how you come to identify it or know it. Is that not sufficient proof for you to say that they're one? Different? Or do you feel if that's the case, then even pot and top should be different? Is that something that you'd end up feeling?
So just because it doesn't feel enough to make it different to me. I mean, or it's kind of defined by that, but I mean, the definition of one is that which appears as not diverse conceptually, and the mode of delineation in language is also kind of one. So I think, yeah, I don't know. So that's not in the definition, so it's not.
예, 제가 천준이 예벌이야 안에 고쳐봐 서버베 도대 이나양 안에 단다 진이도 천전이디 다딕셔도 메도스 다모란 다딕 간데고 거는.
So what is it like? What's a minimum requirement therefore for something for two things to be different according to you? If the fact that they are known sequentially, right? We're saying that are you accepting that they're known sequentially?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If knowing them sequentially is not sufficient proof or not sufficient, is not a good enough reason for them being different, then how do you envision two things to be different? What is a minimum requirement for them to be different?
Well, I feel like to me it's different when I do refer to a different thing.
to two different things.
Yeah, then they are different. So silver pot and pot are different because I'm referring to different the referent is different of each.
어디 죽식이 시고라 가고 그랬어 그러봐. 죽식이 다 주단에 개발도 그러봐. 따라와.
죽단라 개발 여버 삼기 페이지 다들
때문도
죽식거라 가고 얘기를.
다 주단들했다니 아니 시디 다 군이 다들 스키지 지금도.
So you're saying the way in which you engage it is not sufficient to posit difference. The referent of what you're engaging in is what determines whether they're different or not. Is that okay? Is that a fair way to describe what you're thinking? So the fact that you engage in them sequentially or in different ways is not sufficient reason for them to be different. But what you engage in has to have different reference. Is that sufficient? Or is that a good enough reason for you to say that they're different? Is that what you mean? When you say the reference?
I think so.
Yeah?
I'm not very sure because base and referent, I'm not sure what the difference is.
So referent is exactly the thing that you're referring to. Base is just the illustration. So that's the difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're saying different referents are needed for it to be different?
I think so.
죽식하고 그랬어.
죽시다가 요새는 이제 텐션.
좋아. 답변하러 고 예배로라 봐. 배나 도디시 주주기 주주네 번예배 그 로리야 pomba샤단직. 에네 남샤준도 아주 pom바 스튜던베 로르샤단직 디니를 다 개발요나면서.
So is there a difference in the referent of the mind that knows flat-based bulbous thing that has the ability to hold water to be a pot? Yeah, so there's one mind that knows a flat-based bulbous thing is a pot, the way that mind thinks pot, and then another mind that doesn't know flat-based bulbous thing that has the ability to hold water and thinks pot. Can there be two such minds?
A mind that doesn't know what flat-based bulbous thing is, but it knows what
and
pot
thinks
is.
pot. No, not knows what pot is, but thinks pot.
Okay,
Can you
there's
have
a
such a mind?
difference. But he's just thinking of the three letters pot then. Not really. There's a difference in the reference.
Is there a mind that has the thought pot, one with the content of flat-based bulbous and that has ability to hold water, and then another mind that has the same thought pot without that content? Can you have these two different minds?
I'm not sure he's thinking. I don't know what
That's
he
not
thinks.
the point. Just can you have these two thoughts? Both of them are the thought pot. One has content and one doesn't have content. Can you have these two kind of minds?
I don't think so.
아니 또 대시험 주주기 된시는 뭐 되미 쉐발라 본바원이야 별로 매스나 잘로로.
좋아.
자지기 한번 별로.
좋아. 도디시 주주기 된전 너버
마쉐발라 폼진 더번 매스. 다 본바원이야 별로 매스.
pomba yo maris pomba lo jig marwa.
본바 더벨로도 기 마레스. 본바원이야 별로야 매스 웅거.
알지자 도디시 주주기 된전
된시는
너버
뭐 되미 쉐발라 본바원이야 별로야 매스.
제상아디 다디로 아주 신인이 보고도 저에 토네 안 전자디 시에고서.
무랑기 시엘라 온디르.
디르와.
얘네 체니 마쉐발라 천자 깡바 냠벨로 매스 웅거.
알레 다 pomba 세게 섬르트 메스 거로.
냠벨로 메스.
아래 다디다 디데 유지 말아. 남주 시골 왜?
남주 자지 캬바 즘벨로 시고로.
오래 레지 장부 즘벨로 시고로. 디칸디 시에로 남주.
디레
다지 빼나
pomba 쉐발라 pomba 냠벨로 디초제.
제상가
다디 폼진 더바 이민 저바 가가로라.
레레레레레.
제가 지단 pomba 냠벨로 키에마게스는 자지 캬바 즘벨로 가서 남주 체니직 주가 셔버.
디레 디 삼르당 서치도 가지는서나 빼나 란주기 pomba 즘베기 로라라. 주주 빼나 또 디시 주주 동전에 버레레레 신국 요네면나.
아주 혼자 상황 벽에 날아 가는 겨르데 그 상황을
안
즘벨로로.
제상가 대상주 쇼즈만 껴 레스 말이스. 좋아.
So you know when you do the prayers in the morning in Tibetan, you recite them? Yeah. So Rinpoche is asking because this is a debate. It's not clear. This is a debate. But are you reciting the refuge verses in the morning when you're reading them in Tibetan? When you're doing Sangye Chodam Sogi Chonamla?
If I do that.
Yeah, if you
I do that.
You do that? So you do have that thought. Is that reciting the refuge verse? That's not Mari.
Mm.
If I do it in German, it's different than if I do it in English. It's
Not
different
in
than
English, in Tibetan, because in English you know the meaning of the words. I'm saying
Yeah.
if you do it in a language which you don't know, are you reciting the refuge verses?
So I can give a reason why I say so.
No, are you,
Okay.
just are you. This is it's something that is also discussed in the text.
Okay.
Whether you can have a mind that doesn't know the content and is just thinking the thing is something that is discussed. What do you think though? You do have it, right? Like you're doing it every day.
I don't.
Right?
To me, it's not the same thing.
What's the difference? When you're reciting the verses in Tibetan and you don't know what Sangye Chodon Sogi Chonamla means,
Yeah.
but you're reciting it,
Yeah.
and
Conceptually.
when you're thinking pot without knowing what flat
Yeah.
base bulbous thing is,
That's the same thing.
those are the same thing?
Yeah.
So you can have a mind that thinks pot without knowing flat base bulbous thing that has ability to hold water?
Yeah.
You can have that. You can have that?
If you, it depends what you
One
think
sec, just yes or
about.
no?
Yeah. Okay.
You
yes.
can, yeah.
This works.
Oh.
To me.
그래서
Tseni mashebala phumba onya belo kia yore sumurta.
저저 보지 로 달레서야.
Tatile sarta.
달레서.
So there is.
디르와.
Lao yore sum.
또 봄바 저장가 봄바 오년 별로 깨발라. 아니 또 디시 슈주 주는데 상만년이 기고 말이스. 봄바 점서 버다. 봄바 점서 버다.
So you can have a mind that thinks pot without knowing flat base bulbous thing that has the ability to hold water? Anastasia?
What does no mean in that context? I guess accept.
유유 좋아.
You chose.
다 유도 전에니 디디기 롱얼 샤베기 봄바 주요 좋아. 시딜.
So does so there is a referent of this thought? Or is there a pot that appears to this mind?
No. There is a referent, but it's not pot.
Tilongorla Pumba Shargi Mares Juksagi Shichi Yore, huh?
너 주세 시주여 봐. 주세기 시디 가르쳐.
What is the referent of this?
Sorry?
What is the referent of this thought?
So when I recite something not in my language, it's something very strange. I don't know, something unclear, but it's not.
What is the referent?
An assumption about what it is. I don't know, something.
No, assumption is too vague. Assumption is like a very abstract concept. What is it?
What it is when one thinks pot but doesn't
What is
know.
the referent of the mind that is thinking pot without knowing flat base bulbous thing that has ability to hold water?
The three letters P-O-T.
봄비다 들어봐.
P-O-T 이게 차로다.
이게 들어봐다.
자인기로.
라인지로. 또 배낭 알아줘. 배나 청줄미 배나 들어가서 다 됐어. 개천부터 시합이나 대고 가서 그러면 여기 지라마원의 송대 tinju 파도 상물로 청주 지어 봐. 얘네 청주 문진도 로가로로 봐. 얘네 되게 청주 시에라고 그러다.
So, you have the four schools, right? You have Vaibhashika, Sautantrika, Chittamatra, and then you have Madhyamaka, right? Each one qualifies Buddhahood differently, right? So when you say, does a Vaibhashika, when they aspire to Buddhahood, is their mind engaging in Buddhahood?
From the Vaibhashika perspective, yes.
Is it engaging in Buddhahood? Is its referent Buddhahood? It's a referent of their mind that wishes... You can have Vaibhashika Bodhisattvas, right? Like, it doesn't mean to be a Bodhisattva, you have to be a Yogachara or a Madhyamika. You can be a Vaibhashika Bodhisattva. So you're aspiring for Buddhahood, right? You have a mind that wants to attain Buddhahood, but your qualification of Buddhahood is very different from the way that Madhya... So, is the referent of that mind Buddhahood? Of the Vaibhashika?
I already answered.
Yes, no, not... that's not... I'm not asking you that. I'm saying, is it Buddhahood?
I don't feel I can answer that question. Like...
아주 남주 지장과 상기기 산지기 살을 드베 쳐도 산지기 아니 청주 미디 고방 토백이 쳐도 아니 저기 디 줍다시 송버려 송거로 봐. 청주랑로 미니.
Aren't the three, aren't the different tenets with the intention of attaining Buddhahood?
Sorry?
Are the tenets the final goal of all the tenets to attain Buddhahood?
Except.
So all the tenets do aspire for Buddhahood, right?
Okay, yeah.
So they do engage in Buddhahood.
This is way over my...
No, it's not actually, it's not. Surprisingly, it's not. It's exactly the same thing.
Okay.
It's exactly the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, because they all aspire to
No,
Buddhahood?
do they? They all aspire for Buddhahood.
Okay, accept.
They're all thoughts that are engaging in Buddhahood. They all wish to attain Buddhahood.
Accept.
So they have as their object Buddhahood. Do they all have as their object Buddhahood? Is the referent of all of these different minds Buddhahood?
It's not the same reference.
Is
no?
it Buddhahood?
Accept.
No. All the reference are Buddhahood? No.
그래도
Jukshi Tanjo Tanjo is.
중주담 직차로로. 제가 답답파
Chik Chadu Sumar.
아니
Janju race in a Susuki Janju.
어레르와 다 청주 골기 시기로 봤다. 청주 골 청주도 찍들 봤다.
But they might have different ways of talking about Buddhahood, but Buddhahood is one thing.
Can you
They
stop?
might have different ways of qualifying Buddhahood,
Yeah.
but Buddhahood is one, right? Buddhahood itself, is it one or is it different?
One.
One. Buddhahood is one, but they all qualify it differently. So even though they might be qualifying it differently, are they all engaging in Buddhahood? Is the referent of all of those minds one?
I have not thought about this. I don't know, yeah.
예. 다시 생각하고 시직을 미니 미망보기 통주 전부리는 미자유나 미직라 통주자에 쳐나요. 아니 디 통주를 릴 때니 미자기 시액이 튕기면나요. 그 시직을 무진 두 번의 신체.
So is it kind of like saying there's one base that 100 different people look at, and 100 different people might identify it differently or talk about it differently, qualify it differently. And so there are different qualifications, assumptions, whatever about the same thing, but what they're all engaging in or what the referent of all of those things is one. Is that okay? Do you feel comfortable saying that?
No.
No.
직 말했어.
주시직 말했어.
주시직 말했어. 다단다 배나 미 배나 초 배나 단다 어릴 때 붙여샤나 단다 쇼 녀다 잡았다. 그래.
Has Trump won? He has? Okay. Yeah.
담미수도 통주를 요봐. 배로 배나 데 야구레스네 야구 말했으니 얘 미지골기 쉬어봐. 얘는 시지강도 다가랑을 마도 지기 니 골이 지금에 다 쳐잖아.
So everyone, some people like him, some people don't like him. They're all speaking about it differently. But are they all speaking about the same referent? Is the referent of all of those opinions the same person? Is it one person?
I guess.
들어. 제상가디 디 nenga chimbo yiri ne da be ta chobe ji diris la west ke yoman be do de di ni ju ya bu ji shenbe yina ani 제상 단다 가서 더지 장버스로 와 더지 장버스 로지 개초 요다 메세디 nenga chimbo chag도 와.
So it doesn't really matter right now whether this is correct or not, but we haven't done this yet. You know, we did meaning generality. There's also something known as sound generality that comes up later. And then there is a discussion about whether you can have conceptual minds that have only sound generalities that they're thinking of. So meaning generality will be like the content of the thing, and the sound generality is almost like only the definiendum. So this debate, whether it's right or not, or whether it's possible, is not relevant, but you can start to get an idea or feeling of how later on when you discuss it, you can either posit or not posit the possibility of conceptual minds that are engaged only in sound generalities or not, right? So it's kind of a similar. Yeah, it's connected to that kind of general, larger discussion.
Chibadi kharsa, chibadi chiro chigi.
Orangi tiwa di tenzunyi la thadi sheye di tebu dosu.
No, tenzunyi ore, tsenyi da chunjanyi di nyebe rinpa yore mato, nyirim yore di,
Chusagi shi thadi mati koran thadi maare.
dirida. Tadi yang konda gyala kadi shunariro.
You can also ask again this evening. That might be a good thing to ask again.
Okay. So there's one more and then we can stop. You have one more, right?
How do we deal with hesitations that we feel about being right and wrong, and also resistance to asking questions?
Kanisa?
Can you say that again?
How do we deal with hesitations about, giving the right answer, not saying the wrong answer, and also resistance to asking questions?
Tiwa?
Lengi yundu lendi tikdama tikse ki kunzu terna shivu yusarwa.
Alelele.
Semde chete.
Len gyabdu chambe.
Lengi yabdu tsamme nge lendi tata thegi tu len noryo chik gyabgi digi chik terna chur. Kunzu mabuchil.
Alelele.
Odila kandri chur chik. And the other one, the hesit ani an tiwa taya la this ngotsara uchur. Odingi la kare chures.
Tanda len gyabe kabla ngala ya tiwa le shendoji. Nge tanda shendo shingi me. Ine dil shendoji du chambe digi shendo tela nyegi ta churo se gorbe. Part debate partner digi ngala kasus shiki di chebe kabla ya yarjendro yagi samlo di yobe ina. Ani kang shea di gyani gyadama pyuta wo goya kemido wa. Ko garjinasana tangbone susu ki space chi karsu yorsana ngarangi shendo yo slabdu chambe rangshingi shendo yo ba digi nga shibuji len gyago resame yagi nga jid macha asha du chambe ko rangshingi jangdo ki samlo du shukchimbo yidu chambe nore norse yachi le choro.
So if the kind of the way you approach it, the space that you're approaching it from is with a wish to know, then your debate partner or whoever you're asking questions to, you're asking them from the space of wanting to know. So if you enter from that space, from that vantage point, then you already have no ego or any kind of preconceived notions about being correct or knowing the right thing because you've approached it with the wish to know. So if you approach something with the wish to know, then whether what you say makes sense or not, it doesn't really matter. But that's only possible if you've entered with the wish to know or you're approaching it with a wish to gain knowledge about something.
So we have a saying in the Tibetan, the pride is like a piece of stone, and then if you try to put water on that kind of stone, it is not going to work anything. It won't absorb any water there. So the message is very clear. So when we study, when we try to learn something, and then we must welcome always others' debate, teaching, advice. That something has to do with for yourself some improvement, right? Improvement. So that means from your side, a wish to know, not like to give a in an examination. You cannot do this kind of mistake. Well, I wanted to learn more, so that is like very bad excuse. So, and the best in the learning when you are debating, hold the position like I will hold so strongly. What are some kind of a debate? It's coming towards you. that you have to welcome it. That even the person is very sharp-minded, even you're saying it's 100% correct, but if your debate partner is very sharp-minded, he is capable to challenge you quite strongly. But then it doesn't mean the debate you have defeated it temporarily, but through his logic and reason, you can learn a lot. So that is why when we debate, sometimes you hold the position very well, and then you meet someone who can take away this your thesis. But then back home, you would feel deep inside, I'm so right, but how did that come up? And that's wonderful. But then that's the time you can think a lot, contemplate a lot, and then also check with your teachers. At that time, you can really see the kindness of your teachers. Then you can also understand. And most beautiful is you can bring more, at that time he debated like that, but this is not kind of the way I should understand like this. This is more like a kind of a trick, or this is kind of this way. Then you hold to this position very clean. 제상가 ranzu tanda 기사님만 콘솔지 라비 제상가 반대 레바야 되와 모디타야님도 저거 만나는 거라 양 공부로도 당아 좀 맞서는 챌린지 된 공부로도 그래도와 양 공부로도 밥 해먹어체 아니 레바야 되와 차를 밥 배기 송도 전배 아니 저랑 디다 가서래 고라님도 챌린지 해봐라 아니 교육은 내가 차상 그런 게 또도 도움도 게 뒤딱이 있어. 공부를 저기 담자 레바야 가서디 모디 땅양 나신지지 담자 친구들 좀 다스노도 대서 군이고 정도가 레바야 되와. 제상가 아니 공부를 저 코스면 좀 인세게 저 뒤봐. 또 늦우 가르고고 얼스나 아 저기 로전체베 다시 제베 까불이야. 비게 니주 정말 지신지 세버지 최소에다가 신규여 삼니다 이게 마편바 된다 튕규연의 면에 수수의 담자들을 내비기 직 통원도 좀 딜라 랑신기 가주 제주체 수치를 줘버리나 딜라 예버트야 수치에도 좀 띵아주 라고는 마셔가지고 도스 띵이스레스.
So like that story that we mentioned the other day when there's Arya Nagarjuna who is supposed to go and debate with Ashvaghosha who's in Nalanda, who was a non-Buddhist master. But then Aryadeva decides to go instead of Arya Nagarjuna because he's old, at which point then Nagarjuna first says, let me test whether you're good enough. And so by holding the same position that Ashvaghosha holds, when he replies to Aryadeva, then Aryadeva, there's a point when Aryadeva is in a bit of like a confused state, and then he does this korsum, which is kind of like it's almost a little bit disrespectful done to your own teacher, right? So there's that story that we recount, and the point of the story is that when you're trying to understand something or you're trying to hold on to a position, even though you might feel that you're absolutely correct or your position is accurate, that's really not going to be sufficient, because when you hold on to a position and you see some sort of error with it or you see fault with it, then your wish to analyze further or your wish to check and clarify and further refine your understanding, that becomes progressively stronger if your intention is wanting to understand or know something. So that ability or that opportunity is extremely precious. You have to ensure that this kind of attitude or motivation doesn't get lost.
다디 제상가 다 가수 신두기 되바디 가수 숙체 레온도 전에 디기 된다라야 나 가르소리 처리해야지 정신이 라려야지. 그전에는 아 신은 리고도 세지. 가리니 예면에면 어디 신은 리고도 세. 자 저기 자와가시엘이야 시부 전도여도 내가 쇼시무실에 온도 전에 뒤처럼 뭐 차고 말에 미지라고 말에 직지고 말해서도
So the stronger your wish to know something is, and the more kind of pure that intention of wanting to know something is, the less you get concerned with making a good impression or appearing intelligent or appearing dumb or appearing to be ignorant or illiterate or stupid, because your intention is to know something. Very much like if you want something or you desire something very strongly, all you're concerned with is getting it. Even if someone comes to you and says, hey, don't behave like this, people will think, what will people think of you? How will they think of you? Or how will they speak of you? At the end you say, I really don't care what people say or think about me, I really want this. Similarly, if you want to really understand something, irrespective of how you're perceived by others or whether you come across as intelligent, wise, it doesn't really matter because your intention is just to know it. So then embarrassment, shame, image, those things don't matter anymore.
지상가 단도 뉴러 장비 딱 깔로 인주 장비 냐바도 르 땅고야디 아주마 손에 미 가를 라비니 랍 삼네 삼 이나양에 디 리베기 트레드 차고 도스 당 얘기 미유디 인스들 장비 아니 거로지니 쿠랑기 롭종 제당 삼로 땅가랑 마도 지기 아니 셴려야 지기 어송체기 계제도 준 자원이요 말이스.
So when you're studying Dudra, especially when your intention is, and the purpose of studying Dudra is to learn how to reason, that should be your sole motivation or your sole underlying drive, is to learn how to reason. While you're doing that, whether someone thinks well of you or speaks well of you or thinks badly, speaks badly is insignificant. Your objective, your aim should be, I need to learn how to reason. That's my only sole objective. And with that sole objective in mind, you just go forward unconcerned about how people will think or speak or whatever about how you've behaved or what you're doing. That's your sole objective. So you just go driven with that.
Like handwriting. If you wanted to focus to write a good, very nice handwriting, you would draw as much, you will write as much as you can. And then also you won't say, if other people will see this, my notebook, what will they will tell about me, what my classmates will. If you stop there, then the success won't be there. So just forget about what other people say, just do your own work very carefully, diligently. So then, result you have to see it. So like after now in December, middle of the December, you need to see your result. So that's why after here, when you are debating, answering, you really need to engage in this very well. It doesn't matter what other people will think. It's more like what you are going to take from here. So if you just think about what will they say or my teacher will say, and what will other people will think about, they are doing very well, I'm not doing well. You hold to this, then you are going mostly like empty-handed. So keep this in your mind and debate like a crazy. And that way, enjoy it. Enjoy it. Oh, so yesterday, Adisha, and we had a discussion that most of you wanted to do a debate in the afternoon. So which Adisha was very happy, and I was very happy, and my teacher will be super happy to learn that, because it's more like now you guys are so ready to do it. So we really don't know that we should let you debate and we think, will you feel comfortable or not? But it's from the students. How do you say that?
I don't know how you translate this one.
Voluntarily.
Voluntarily. Yeah.
Voluntarily, normally in the like when I was studying, the teacher will push you to go. And then in the monastery, if you don't go to debate, you get some kind of fine. But here, you are requesting to give this kind of a time. So it was so good, so good. And so not only just feel like you do it, you should do it. And then I will come and join, and also Adisha will be monitoring, several monitoring. And then we have so many good debaters. So when we first start this class, we try to feel like if most people does not know how to debate, that will be very difficult. Some people debate very well. So now you have a good environment. So now try to take advantage of that. Okay? So then it is a very good news. So thank you for your encouragement. Thank you. Thank you.
Having thoroughly investigated and thought with all that I have heard, day and night through the 4 reasons, my form of reflection on these topics of contemplation, may this discernment settle